Hello, and hope you're doing all right today. It's me, Scott Claus again, CG Spectrum, checking to see if everything's working. We've got sound, we've got picture. Hey, Renato. Hey, Sherry. Yeah, just checking to see if everything's working technically. Oh, good. Sounds good, looks good. Well, that's always nice to hear. So cool. Yes, and welcome. Welcome to another live stream with me, Scott Claus, representing CG Spectrum. I like to hold up my fancy dancy t-shirt here. And mention that this is brought to you by CG Spectrum, the school with all your CG and related needs met at cgspectrum.com. So welcome. Hey, Kevin. Nice to see you again. And if you've been here before, you know the drill. I'm going to be drawing and talking about animation, and you're always welcome to chime in if you have any questions or anything you'd like to talk about or discuss. You can ask me questions. I'm happy to answer anything as long as it's fairly on topic and it's not rude. And you can also talk to your friends in chat in case you're interested in that too. But yeah, today I'm going to be working on something that I've been working on now for a while. This is, I believe, week 4 or 5 with this. This is a cat, a Disney cat that I've been working on. So I'm going to continue on that today. I'm just about done doing the key cleanup pass, and then I'll be doing some breakdowns, and we'll see how far I get tonight. And then we're getting closer and closer to the point where it looks real pretty. And so, yeah, the next couple weeks, hopefully I'll be finishing this one up, and it'll look really nice. So be sure and stop in. But mostly we just come here to talk, don't we? Talk about animation. So I have another topic for tonight, which is, can I get a job in animation? So that's something that's on everybody's mind. And it's not just animation, but get out of the way. Can I get a job in the entertainment business? That's a question that a lot of people ask me. And they ask me, how can I get a job in the business? And I answer that one a lot. And I can continue to answer that question. But mostly today I'm talking about, well, is it even possible? And I've got some advice, some stories. And like I said, I'll just continue to work on my cat scene. Just to get you caught up, this is based on character takes. Just flash these real quick. So I've talked about this enough. I don't want to keep going on and on about this. If you've not joined me in past sessions, you can look back and see what I've said about character takes. Today I'm mostly talking about a scene that's already been done, and now I'm cleaning it up and I'm finishing it off. And so that'll really be the topic today, along with the idea generally of, well, can I get a job in the business? Can I get a job in the world of entertainment, whether it's games or more art related? Not that it isn't all art related, but you know, is it concept art, character design, or what if I want to do the storytelling? What if I want to come up with the ideas and the IPs? We have that in here a lot. People ask about that. So I'm just going to ramble on and on about that. Generally, my experience is Disney and DreamWorks and visual effects studio, Rhythm and Hues. So between the 3 of those experiences, I got a lot of studio stuff under my belt, working on high-profile films. Again, in case you've never stopped by here before. And then I've also worked on my own projects at length, books, movies, live shows, and things. So I know a couple of things about this stuff, and I have a lot of friends in the entertainment industry as well, as I toiled there for 20 plus 25 years, something like that. I'm semi-retired. I'm a teacher now, meaning I mostly do this, but I still have lots of connections to entertainment, and I live in Los Angeles. So anyway, those are the things I'm going to be discussing, but I'm always welcoming whatever you have to say. I'm always happy to serve. So hit me with questions and topics if you want. I'm going to switch to work mode now and look at some of those things you guys are already saying, and then get started drawing. How long will it take to master Houdini, says Chambala Ali. roughly your entire life. So I don't know. I don't know how long it takes to master Houdini. I never even tried because I'm too scared. I have it on good authority that it's not an easy program to learn. But think of it this way, particularly those of you who are young, which most of you probably are, at least in comparison to me, the sooner you get started, the sooner you'll get to the point where you've mastered it. I never thought that I would master Maya, and I haven't mastered Maya. But I do feel really comfortable with the program, and when they update it, I feel like it doesn't take me long to get around in it. That is a very tough program to learn Maya, and so based on my experience with that, and with the Adobe Suite and After Effects, which I have taught, and it's another really tough program to master. Uh, Really, you just need to sit down and start, and you have to have a project in mind. So think about this. It's really important that you remember this. You aren't just learning Houdini. You're learning how to do things with Houdini. Houdini exists solely to be a tool to help you create the things that you need to create, whether it's for a job or for yourself. And so don't get trapped into this concept of, I need to learn a software program. No, you need to learn how to use the software program to get what you want. It's subtle, but there is a difference. So you're learning Houdini because you have projects you want to accomplish or things that you want to do. And then you'll find that mastering the program comes much more quickly because you are working on something specific. You've got a goal in mind. You're looking down the road and going, I will be here. And that's what mastering most things entails. So hopefully that helps to answer your question. Again, I'm not a Houdini person. There are lots of people at CG Spectrum who are, and they'll be happy to talk to you about that. So check in one of the other streams or sign up for a class. But yeah. Hey, Riz1 Nation, you're editing a 3D animation you made. Well, that's excellent. I'm curious, are you editing it in Maya, or are you editing it outside of Maya using something like After Effects or another software program? There's always a question about that. Should I have everything in my one software? Should I do everything in After Effects, everything in Maya, everything in Unreal? Or should I use programs together to create my end results? And the answer is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. I like to do as many things as I can inside a program. For example, I'm doing most of what I'm going to create here. I'm going to do it all in Toon Boom. But often as not, I take my stuff out of Toon Boom and then composite it in After Effects because I feel comfortable doing that. But you don't have to. So Kevin, you're interested in today's topic about the jobs, right? So, I mean, the question is, not at the moment, the question is, where are those jobs and how am I going to find them? I will answer that question. It's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I will answer that question. But the question is, first of all, like, can I get a job in whatever it is I want to do? And the answer to that is yes. The answer is unequivocally yes, you can get a job doing the things that you like to do. Well, let me rephrase that. It's not a definitive yes, it's yes, you have the potential to, because there are no guarantees about anything in life. And so I don't want to say, well, you promised, you said I could get a job doing this. It's like, no, you have the potential to get the job doing this if you want it bad enough and you practice and you're dedicated almost to obsession. Then you'll, and if that's the one thing that you want, then you will get it. I've seen it happen too many times. Short of the world suddenly imploding, which is not likely to do, it could, but and if you're really smart about your direction that you go in and try really hard and do some of the things I'm going to talk about today, then you have the potential to achieve the goals that you want. So doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean that it's like, oh, well, I wished on it. I get it. That's, something Disney films used to say. It's like, oh, you wish upon a star, you get it. No, it's not like that, but it's not that far away from that too. So, just want to make sure you're editing 3D animation, which you made in lightweight 3D in iMovie. Oh, that's cool. I'm very fond of people who I'm very fond of the idea of just doing it yourself. I've said this in these streams several times. Is you don't have everything you need to do what you want. We'll find a way. When I was a kid, I didn't have access to clay animation or rubber, polystyrene. I didn't have the ability to get puppets to do stop motion with. So I created them out of tin foil. I mean, that's all I had, so that's what I did. We're talking many years ago. And I knew that someday I would have the resources I wanted, but until then I was just going to keep trying. And so I created things with Play-Doh and tinfoil, and off we go. So the first lesson of the day is do not be held up by, oh, I don't have the resources I need to do what I want. Find a way to do it anyway. There's freeware programs out there, and for all else fails, there's paper and pencil and things. And if that isn't even available to you, then if you've got a computer, then you can finger paint on the computer. You know, don't let it stop you. Don't let the lack of resources be the thing that keeps you from creating. And then the more resources you have, try them and make sure that you understand them, and just try it. And just keep trying and fail, and then get up and try again. All right, so before we proceed any further, I want to show you what's happening with the scene. I've showed this before, so if you've been here before, you recognize this. But this is my scene that I'm working on. It's a cat take. The cat heard something, looked, and then reacted. And it's sort of a Disney style cat, as I showed before. It's kind of based on Thomas O'Malley. I started out roughing it really rough, and then I tied it down to the version you see today, and then I added whiskers for a little bit of overlap and follow through. And now, starting last week, I think that's when I started, I am doing cleanup tests, cleanup lines on it. So if I get rid of this, you can see that it's a real nice tight vectory cleanup that you get with Toon Boom, which is awesome. And then I'm also respecting the charts that I set up. I talked about charts last week a little bit, although my charts aren't completely in sync at this point. They were just used for the animation, but now I'm starting to go off of them a little bit. And then what I'll do once I've got all the keys and the breakdowns done is I'm going to go through and do some troubleshooting and make sure everything still looks really nice. I can already see a couple of things I want to fix before we get any further. So don't mind me. I'm just going to fix up some eyes. Got a little bit too big. So Rizwan, you've been trying to, you've been working on this for 7 months to get to this point. Aha! So Rizwan Nation, you're actually learning what it is to be an actual artist in the world of CG, which is, it takes lots and lots of time. It takes a long time to do things that look cool. And I'm going to just level with you. It isn't always a case where all that time pays off. And you can't be afraid of that. You can't think to yourself, well, but wait a minute, if I spend all this time and then it doesn't work out the way I wanted it to, was that a waste of time? Nope, it wasn't, because then you'll just move on to the next one. So don't be afraid of spending time on projects to make them what you believe is the best they can be. Even if no one sees it, even if nothing comes of it, you got the experience and it'll help you for the next one. Eventually, you'll see it pays off. Assuming you want to keep doing this sort of thing. There are some people who will give up right after they figure out, oh, wow, that was really hard, and I don't know if I can do that anymore. So, and that's okay. It's all right if you come to that conclusion after trying something. You're just like, this is not for me. I'm not happy, and I don't want to do this anymore. That's an acceptable solution. But for the rest of us, there may come a time when you find that all that hard work pays off, and that's what you want to get to. So yeah, 7 months. That's great dedication. That'll serve you well if you decide you want to do this sort of thing for a living. So Kevin, studying timing advice on getting the timing right. Usually just move the keyframes around until the animation feels right. Well, that's probably after can I get a job, the second question I'm always asked is, how do I learn timing? And timing, it's sort of like, how do I learn to be mature? It's sort of one of these things where it comes with practice. And so the more you do it, the better you get at it. And really, if you're observing real life, then you're doing what you need to do to be able to learn timing. You have to observe the real world, and you have to look at stuff slowed down and sped up, and really analyze motion and really think about motion. That's the only way to train your eye to recognize when motion is solid or not. But the idea that it's like that you've said, until the animation feels right, well, that's what most of us do, is we just keep at it until it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that feels about right. And the difference between an amateur and a professional is that the professional has done it so many times that they're actually right when they say that. They're like, no, it really does feel right. And the amateur is like, well, it feels right to me, and they're not even able to see that it isn't quite there yet. So again, there's no getting around the fact that if you want to be an artist in anything, if you want to be a skilled technician in anything, that it's going to take you time, and you have to develop your eye, and you have to practice a lot. You have to look at things in the real world and see how they look, and use real world physics. It's not easy to say that, real world physics. I practiced. That's part of being a teacher, is I practiced saying real world physics over and over again until I could actually say it. But anyway, so yeah, so keep doing that to Kevin. Just keep practicing and keep looking at things and going, does that feel right or does it feel wrong? And if it feels wrong, then why? So all right, so the question that I promised was, all right, can I get a job? Well, I mean, I already answered it. I said, yes, you can get a job. Dozens and dozens of people get jobs like this every day. People were talking to me recently. It's like, well, we're on lockdown and there aren't, studios aren't really hiring, or, any number of excuses as to why they probably shouldn't even try. And by the way, I'm not talking about what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm going to trace and place drawings so that I can line up the shapes of the faces and the hands and make sure it's absolutely the same volume. So I send everything to the X sheet, and then after having done that, then I take things off of the pegs. I've done this before, but for anyone who's new, I take things off the pegs. I can move drawings over the top of each other and then switch views, and then they're still in the exact same place that they were. This is something we used to do in 2D all the time, where you'd have drawings sitting on a light table and you pick them up, place them over the top of each other with the light shining under so you can see, and then you check the volumes and make sure that everything is lined up nicely and that you've got a nice clean in between. If you don't do that, it's going to be all over the place, your work. And I want this to really look tight and clean, and so I have to do this. So anyway, just thought I would point that out, that that's what I'm doing right now while I'm doing it, and then talk about what we were just discussing, which is, so what does it mean when you say, oh, can I get the job? So yeah, I know people who think that, well, because we're in lockdown mode, some places, some aren't, but if you're in lockdown or nobody's going into an office to work, does that mean that I can't get a job? Well, most animation people I know are working from home these days, meaning Disney, DreamWorks, etc., and it's working just fine. And I'm really encouraged by that because that means if it's working now, then we could probably do it again when we're not in lockdown mode. So just something to think about. If you think about the fact that even during times like this, work is still going on and they're still hiring people. So I know people that have just been hired at Disney, at DreamWorks, to do animation stuff anyway, and good for them. Now, on a less savory note, studio just announced that they're shutting down, which is Blue Sky. And so I have a lot of friends who worked there and who are going to be unemployed soon as a result of that. And all I can say about that is, other than it's really sad, but it's part of the nature of the business. Entertainment, it goes up, it goes down. Sometimes there's more than can be handled, and sometimes there's nothing for anyone to do. And so you have to get used to the idea that it's not always going to be sunshine, that a production is sort of, it is entertainment based, whether it's games or anything else. It really is dictated by the people who are buying things. And sometimes people buy things and sometimes they don't. And so I don't know the ins and outs of what happened with Blue Sky. All I know is it's not inconsistent. I've been laid off from studios before, and because there was no work, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Most of the people that I know who are getting layoff notices, well, I mean, which most of the people I know who work there, they expected it. They knew it was coming. It's sad, but it's not unexpected at this point. So it's something that you have to think about if you want to get into the world of entertainment. Is, can you handle the idea that there are going to be times when you're going to get laid off, and regardless of how you feel about it, you're just going to be invited to leave the studio, and that's just the end of, that's just all there is to it. So I guess before even getting into can I get a job, it's just, do you want a job? Do you want a job in the entertainment industry? I assume you do if you're interested in games and learning about art and animation and things like that. And the honest truth is, it's wonderful, because when you do get a gig, it's just heavenly. I mean, a lot of the time, it's like you're doing the kind of things that you always wanted to do, and you're getting paid to do it. And in the case of animation, you're actually creating life. You're actually bringing something to life that didn't have life before. And although it can be a tedious job at times, very slow moving, as you can see from what I'm doing today, but it's doing something like that every day is just wonderful. So there's a reason why people stick around even though the layoffs come and go. It's because they know that when the work comes, it's worth it, and it makes it all worthwhile. And you get to say, hey, I worked on that, whatever it is, and it's going to be loved by a lot of people, and it's going to make a small difference potentially. Now, I don't know that that's the case with every project, but certainly there's potential there. So anyway, so first the question is do I want to get a job doing something that is based in the up and down crazy world of entertainment as a commodity? And the real litmus test for that is those who survive in the business say yes, regardless of whether or not they're afraid of the challenges that come with being in entertainment. The challenges are basically, it moves fast. There's a lot of potential for real crazy up and down lifestyle. Lately, it seems you might have to relocate. A lot of people I know went to Connecticut to find work in Blue Sky, and I thought about it myself, and I was like, no, it's not worth it to me at this point. I've been on enough films. But the people that I know who are really dedicated, it's not even a question of whether or not they want to do it. They never have asked themselves that question. They've just said, no, I want to do it. And that's a big part of why they are successful. I'm really certain. I talk about some of my friends who have said to me, it's like, this is what I was meant to do, and I can't imagine doing anything else. That's a good start. I know a lot of actors, performers, and dancers. I know people who that is just how they look at the world, and it's never occurred to them that there's an option. They have to do that. That's just what they do. When I moved to Los Angeles, my parents gave me a couple $1,000s to get started. I loaned it, sort of family loaned it. And I remember when the money started to run out and I didn't have a job yet, at least, yeah. And I never really thought about turning around and going back home. I just thought, well, guess I'm going to have to get a job. And as a result, I ended up working for 2 days at a department store in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills. I'd heard they were hiring. I was trained to sell sheets to rich people. I just happened to be in a store and someone said, hey, they're hiring. And I said, well, I guess I'll go check it out. And I got hired. And then after 2 days of training, then I ended up getting a job in an editing company that I applied for. They called up and said, hey, come on down. And so I quit my department store job. I worked there for 2 days of training and then I left. But the point is I never thought for a minute that I was going to just go back home to Oregon and not work in LA. It's just I made this decision. I had at least one contact, actually a couple, and there was no excuse for me to not do it. And I was young. I was like, I just thought I will do this no matter what. And I did. So I think part of it is that determination. I think you have to have that. If you have any doubts about what you want to do, I'll work them out now before you go in and make a bunch of decisions about your future. And be sensible and think about what you know you've got, what you know you can do, what you love to do, because it may end up affecting the rest of your career life, your adult life as a working person. So first of all, it's very helpful, if I had to sum all that up, it's very helpful to have focus, to have a good idea about what it is you want. What is your goal? Do I want to be the next director? Do I want to be the next animator? Do I want to have fame and fortune and everything that goes with it? You know, while you're still in the planning stages, think about that. Think about what you want and come up with a clear-cut answer to that question. Because the more clear-cut you are, the more likely it is you'll get the goal. I told you at the beginning, I said, well, the odds are in your favor. If you want to get a job in any business, but specifically entertainment, then the first step is just defining the fact that that is something you want to do and that you intend to do. And then the rest starts to fall in place slowly but surely, which I'll talk about in a minute. Where did I move from? So I was living in a small town in Oregon. If you've been to Oregon, it's on the way to the beach from Salem, the capital. There are a bunch of little towns. There's only one road, and it leads you directly to, it's off of Highway 99, I think, and it leads you directly to Lincoln City and points south. If you were from Portland, Oregon, then you could go to the beach another way, but we never did. So I only did it recently myself for the first time. So anyway, yeah, so that's where I was from. So, I mean, back then we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have internet. Everybody on the planet told me, wow, it's really a long shot. There was no animation business to speak of. I always talk about how I worked at Disneyland. I got an opportunity to work at Disneyland when I was in college. Disneyland put up signs. I guess they were kind of not doing so well then. Hard to believe, but it's true. I used to just finish the story here. So they put up a sign advertising for people to work at Disneyland, and when I was in college, and I just signed up. I had an interview when they came up, and ended up working at Disneyland for 2 summers, thinking that would place me more in line with being able to get a job either at Disney itself or in Hollywood. Little did I know that Disneyland is nowhere near Hollywood and has very few connections, if any, to Hollywood, at least didn't then. I know that's 5,000 years ago, but I don't think it's changed that much. Disneyland is its separate entity, not related to the park necessarily. And so, so I came down here and worked at Disneyland, and it didn't have a direct connection to getting into the movies or animation or anything, but it got me down here. And in the old days, you had to be in Hollywood if you wanted to work in entertainment. The good news is, so again, take note, the good news is that wherever you are right now, you could probably still get into Hollywood entertainment business now, because we've proven in this past year that you can work from home and accomplish a lot of things. Probably not so much if you're a theater person. That doesn't seem to have worked out too nicely. But for CG, animation, post-production, concept art, a lot of these jobs it's possible to do them from the comfort of your own home, wherever you are in the world. I can't emphasize enough how important that revelation is, because that changes things for you. You now have the ability to operate from wherever you're located. And if you can prove that you've got what it takes to get whatever kind of a gig you want, job you want, career you want, then they might overlook the fact that you're not local. And if you're up to the task and can prove to them that you've got something, then you have no idea where it could go. The sky's the limit. And so that's one more reason to not cop out and think, well, if only I could live in the States, if only I could live in Los Angeles, then my dreams could come true. It's like, no, not anymore. It used to be, but now try it and see what happens. Right now, what you really need is you need a good website. And by good website, I just mean you need something that people can look up and find out about you and find out what it is you do. I always talk about my portfolio classes, talk about the fact that if you're applying for an animation job, for example, you need to have an animation reel that reflects exactly what the company's looking for. You can't put a bunch of stuff on there that you just think is cool. I made that mistake when I was young because nobody told me otherwise. One of the reasons I became a teacher is so I can help you guys not to avoid the mistakes that I made. So when you're going to put a reel together, oh, well, welcome, Rizwan Nation from Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome. And yeah, I'm serious when I say I think nowadays there are places all over the world that you can be from and you can still work. Yeah, so, the important thing is that you're able to show that you can do the job at hand. And I have a lot of people that I know who are so talented. They're just amazing students mostly. And I don't know what to tell them because they're too shy to put their stuff out there. They're afraid that if they put their stuff out there, something will happen. Either someone will criticize it or they, I don't know, might get into flame wars on websites. And I'm not saying that's not a thing. It is possible that some websites are toxic and generate an environment where you not only are not going to come any closer to getting work, but you're going to be dealing with a lot of nasty people. It's a thing. You guys are probably a lot more web savvy that way than I am, but you must do it. You must put yourself out there and get yourself known. But at the very least, you have to have a website of some kind, a site that will be an instant directory of the stuff that you like to do. So what I would say is, if you're going to have a reel, if you're required to have a reel, for example, animation, you must have things that move. So you have to have a reel that shows the things that you can do that move. Well, have a website and put all the things that don't move on there. And make sure that it displays all your best work and that it's absolutely fascinating to look at your website. Because what will happen is, and I know because I did this for a living for a while, what will happen is if you have an interesting website, even though your reel itself may not necessarily be up to snuff, you could find that somebody's going to look at your stuff anyway because it's interesting. They go on your website and they're like, huh, that's actually cool, that design. It doesn't really have anything to do with animation, but I'm going to just take a closer look and see more about this person because I'm intrigued. And that's a great place to be. So don't be shy when it comes to selling yourself. Make sure that you've addressed everything that the company that you're applying for, whatever, that you've addressed what they want to see. Don't think that, oh, well, because I've done all these drawings of fish, they're going to hire me at a place that does nothing but robots. That's a big mistake that a lot of people make. But at a certain point, it's like, well, but I can also do these other things, and I'd be more than happy to do them for you if you would just hire me. So have a good website. Have a good website that is a supplement to your reel. Have more than one reel. Have something available so that when people are clicking around looking for you, they stumble across what you can do and will be blown away. I don't know how many times I've looked on Instagram and I was just looking for stuff, or not looking for anything, just looking, I was bored and just sort of randomly zipping around, not really thinking too much, just having fun. And then I've come across somebody's image that they did and was just knocked out by it. And then I'm like, well, who is this person, and what do they do, and how do they get on in the world? And that's a really cool thing. So if you happen to be talented enough to do eye-catching artwork and you happen to put it out there, there may be somebody like me out there who looks at your stuff and goes, I want to know more, and may keep you in mind for jobs or all sorts of things, or just may find, it's like, oh wow, that person's amazing. This happened, there was an image that I just grabbed from Instagram from a TV show recently. Somebody did some fan art of a TV show and I posted it on Facebook, and somebody said, hey, that's by so-and-so. And then I credited that person, and that was free advertising for that person, just me and many other people just posting that image and sharing it with the person's name attached to it. And now more and more and more people know who that person is, and we're impressed enough by that artwork to maybe check their website and go, okay, all right, so that's a person who likes to draw or whatever. So anyway, just keep that in mind, that that's kind of how the world is working these days, at least for now, is you have to have something that's searchable, clickable, immediate gratification. So you don't want to do your 20-minute short film pitch, or something that requires a lot of effort to get through, pages and pages of stuff. Just something that you just click on it and you're like, that's interesting. Maybe I'll click on something else on this page. And the more time a person spends on you when they're looking for people who can do a job, the more likely you've got a chance at least getting into the maybe pile, because we who have looked at and continue to look at portfolios, we don't want to feel like we wasted our time by looking at your stuff and checking out your website. So we'll at least say, well, barring anything really strange, I'm going to put this person in the maybe pile and consider them when I go back through them and decide who's the yeses and the nos. So your goal when you're doing a website / portfolio, whatever, that you're putting together for whatever job you're applying for, your goal is you want to make people spend more time on you, whether it's because your stuff is just so amazing to look at, or because you've got resources and things that are pleasant to check out, and thereby get more attention from whoever's looking at at portfolios or your work that day. So it's just something to think about. Is think about how you can grab somebody's attention in ways outside of whatever they've required you to. Now, some places like Disney, they absolutely don't want to see anything other than what they ask for, and they're very serious about it. If you break the rules with Disney, they don't forgive easily. Again, I haven't applied there recently, and I don't know anyone who has, but last time I checked, which wasn't that long ago, they were very strict about what they want to see and what they don't want to see. They just don't have the time. And keep that in mind. I say this a lot, and I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying, keep in mind that when somebody's looking at your portfolio, that's probably not their only job, that they actually are looking at dozens and dozens of portfolios, as well as having to get their job done. And usually I remember these things would come up around lunchtime. So they'd say, hey, we need you to look at a bunch of portfolios. Can you, or a bunch of reels. Can you do that now? And it's like, it's 15 minutes to lunch. Do I really have to do this? And so I always say this, whoever's looking at reels, they're a human being. They're a person who is doing their best to keep their own career going. And so they want to be entertained, and they want to get this thing over with actually as soon as they possibly can. Not because they're mean, but just because it's something that's just the way the world works. So be entertaining, be fun, show people your best work. Don't waste their time with stuff that is not ready to go. And the people who are looking at your work will be very grateful for that. They'll thank you for it later, and that thank you may turn into a job. So, all right, so we've got some comments here. To take here, and Stephen Dorado says, that's why you decided to make your own site with your own stuff. Yeah, that's excellent. Now, will your stuff get seen? Well, maybe if you attach it to something else. And if you link to something else, but it's a great start. That's awesome. Patriot, ArtStation's a good place to put your work. Yeah, ArtStation is really hot right now. There's a possibility it's getting oversaturated. There's a possibility it's getting harder and harder to make a name for yourself on that site, which is just what happens. It's the nature of the biz. Another one will come along and then everybody will jump on that. Do yourself a favor, keep your eyes and your ears reverse that. Keep them open for whatever the newest trend is, for where people are putting stuff and being discovered for their stuff. Doesn't mean you want to go chasing every latest thing, unless that's something you really enjoy doing. You don't necessarily need to go chase down every single new technology or website that comes along, but a little of that will make you at the front of the line when the new website comes out that is where people are being discovered, because ArtStation or whatever has gotten old. I'm not saying it has, I'm just saying it's pretty likely it will eventually, because that's just the way the world works. MySpace, anyone? DeviantArt, remember when that was a thing? So just keep that in mind as you're trying to get yourself noticed, because it's getting really, really hard to get yourself noticed, to rise above the pack. But that doesn't mean you should stop. But yeah, ArtStation's great. Dennis, you say, oh, well, thank you for saying it's good to see me streaming. That's a good question. You have a question. Let's say you have a well-paying job, you do all work, no much animation, too much stress, yet there's another job lower than your current job. You do exactly what you want in the studio. Say about that for those job offers like that. It's kind of a detailed question. I'm trying to sort this out a little bit. Maybe you could rephrase it in a simpler way, but you have a well-paying job, but you do all work, not much animation, too much stress. If there's another job lower than your current job, there are senior animators and stuff around you, do exactly what you want in the studio. What do you say about that for those get job offers like that? That's, I'm not 100% sure what the question is. Sorry, Dennis. But it sounds like the situation, at least, is maybe you're not exactly happy with the gig that you have, and there may be other people around you who are doing things that you want to do, and it's two things. Either there's potential that if you want to do that, you're going to have to step down a step or a notch or two, or it just seems like what they're doing is more desirable than what you're doing. So that's a bunch of stuff to think about. I'm going to put that one on pause. Just hold on, and you're going to answer that in a sec. But first of all, Kevin asks, I've been trying to learn 3D. Which courses in CG Spec should I take to be job ready? Should take all 3D animation courses. Well, as it happens, I happen to know somebody who is involved in the 3D animation department, me, and we're making some changes and pushing things. And I think it would be an excellent place to start if you're interested in 3D animation. By the time you finish the course, you may not be, it may not be a direct lead to a job, because nothing is. Nobody can promise that. And beware of people who do. Beware of companies that promise to get you a job. Nobody can promise you that any more than they can promise that you're going to live to a certain age. I guess I could say that they could stop you from living at a certain age, but we won't go there. So just be wary of companies that say, we will place you, we will get you a job. Nobody can do that. But by the time you're done, you will have pushed yourself and created things enough to make a reel and have a mentor who sits with you and says, I believe that that needs to be pushed if you want to get a job using that for your reel, and on and on and on. Think about this. A little plug for CG Spectrum. The classes are never more bigger than 4 students, and so you get time with your mentor in a way that you would never get if you were actually in a, like they call them brick and mortar schools, where you go to a location and you sit in a class. The classes I've taught that are like that, with exceptions, they're usually 15 students or more, and there's no way a teacher can give you personalized attention when there are 15 students in a class at different levels. As a teacher, I'm telling you, I love teaching, but as a teacher, it's really difficult because you want to give everybody individual attention. I mean, just look at me talking to people in chat. You guys are asking awesome questions, but I can't answer them all at the same exact time. So you have to prioritize, and you have to be good at splitting your brain into different parts and going, okay, this student needs this one needs this one needs that. Well, imagine now that you only have to deal with 4 students or less if the class doesn't fill up. And you have the mentor who is somebody who's worked in the business one-on-one, and you get to talk to them one-on-one and ask questions or get your work reviewed. And that's one of the wonderful advantages of a school like CG Spectrum. Are there other schools that will teach you things? There are. That's always going to be the case. What is it about CG Spectrum that makes it special? Well, I think we try harder. You can go to a school that has a really zippy reel. I won't name any of them, but you have to ask yourself, does everybody who come out of that school have a reel like that? I don't know, maybe they do, and more power to them. But just ask yourself how much the mentors care when you look around at their website and when you're deciding where to go. So anyway, so yeah, take all the 3D animation courses. It's good for you. That's my answer. So Stephen, advertise your site. There we go. Update new stuff. Of course, it gets hard getting those eyes to your site. Yep, yeah, it is hard getting eyes to your site, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. So I'm really excited that you're actually putting yourself out there and making the world know that you're out there and you're creating things. And it's just a matter of time. At some point, it just becomes a matter of outweighing the competition. I always say this too about entertainment as a business. Most of it is just you're so persistent that you won't go away, and eventually they just got to find something for you to do, so they give you a job. I can't tell you how many people I know who are not qualified to do what they do, and they have jobs anyway, and it's just because they're just passionate and determined, and they just keep at it until they get what they want. And that's why I said you can do it. You can get a job no matter depressed economy, no animation business going on at all. And yet I still know people who continue to work. I have a friend who is the one who inspired me to say, yes, you can get a job doing what you want. She told me in no uncertain terms that she believed that her lot in life was to be a person who worked in revisions and cleanup and that sort of thing. And she's done it ever since I've known her, and never ever has she given up. And as a result, she keeps working. So, all right. So back to what you're saying. So, I mean, for Dennis's sake, just to kind of summarize, if I got this right. Oh, hey, Kushal. Nice. That's cool. So just to summarize, it's like, well, let's say you find yourself in a situation where you're looking at maybe a job change. So you've already got a job, but it's not necessarily the job that you always dreamed of. Should I go for a change? Should I take a risk? It depends. I mean, I always say it's like follow your dreams, do what you love what you do, but you got to pay the rent. And so if it's going to mean you're going to have to mortgage a house, if you're going to have to put your family in jeopardy, then you really need to think seriously, because every time I've been out of work, and I've been out of work like 3 times, seriously out of work 3 times in my life, the answer to me getting employed again has always been, well, keep going in the direction you were going, even if it means you got to split off a little bit. But it's the likelihood that you're going to just drop everything and do something completely different when you've been in the workforce for a while is pretty thin. That likelihood is pretty thin, because no one's going to hire you to be an animation artist when you're an accountant and that's what you've done for 10 years or 5 years. They'll say, well, but you have absolutely no experience doing the thing you want to do. Why should we bank on you when there are all those people who chose their life mission early on and have been practicing it ever since they were little kids? In the case of some of us, why would we give it to you instead of them when we can see point blank what they can offer us? That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you have to think about that. Think about why it is you want to jump ship and do something else. The answer to, oh, it looks like they're having a better time of it is usually, not always, but usually they aren't having a better time of it. It just looks like they are. You're probably a lot happier than you really think. Short of being absolutely miserable, you're probably as happy as anybody else. It's just, it may not look that way. Looks can be deceiving. You look on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you like to look, and you see someone who just looks like they're having the best time ever. You don't know what their story is. All you know is that they've shown you their happiest moments, and they may be trying to convince themselves how happy they are. In a work situation, you see people and they look like they're just having an easy time of it. I've seen that happen again and again. I've also seen those people get laid off quickly because they were having too easy of a time of it, and the people who got to keep their jobs worked really hard. So don't do things because you think that somebody else is having more fun, or you'll probably regret it. It's not what you think, most likely. But let's say you do have an absolute passion for something, and for whatever reason you didn't get your start in it early on in life. Well, there still may be a chance. That is, you just have to prove that you want it more than the other person. And I've had people say to it, it's the equivalent of somebody who says, well, I may have only one leg, but I still want to run in the marathon. And they'll just have to, maybe they might have to work a little bit harder if they don't have all their limbs, but it doesn't mean they can't do it. And if you're determined to do something, that's what I said right at the top, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. And if you really have that kind of passion that makes you want to do something like that, then you owe it to yourself to try. What else are you here for if not to try things and fail a lot and learn from your mistakes and then get better and do it right the next time? I failed a lot. My first big failure was I didn't get into CalArts, and I thought that I should have gotten into CalArts, and I just didn't. And I know the reason I didn't was because I didn't prepare for it right. I didn't take it seriously enough. But the main thing that I actually asked the school, and we're talking 1.5 million years ago in the 80s, I asked the school to tell me why I didn't get in if they could. And they said, well, really, if you had applied sooner, you probably would have made it. But because you applied at the end of the period when we were accepting applications, we'd already filled our quota. And so apply next year and you'll probably get in. But that, my parents weren't interested in that. It was very expensive to go to that school, and it was not a sure thing. And so I learned right then and there. I said, if you want something, I said to myself, if you really want something, you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to work to get the things that you want, because that's the only way you're ever going to appreciate them when they finally arrive. So again, can I get a job doing the things that I love? Well, yeah, it depends on how much you love them. It depends on how much you're willing to work for it. And some people, like I said, find that they've worked really hard for something, and then they get close to it and go, yeah, no, that's not what I want to do. And I always say in class, the classes that I teach, I say, look, you come to school to fail. You don't come to school to knock it out of the park. If you were an expert at whatever it is you love to do, then why do you need to take classes? You take classes to make all the mistakes you can possibly make, so that when you get out into the real world, you don't have to make those mistakes on the job. And so that when you do get a job, which is not easy to do, I mean, can I get a job? Yes, you can, but is it easy? No, it's not. People who hire and are going to pay you to do something, they take it very seriously. And so you should take it seriously when you're looking for a job. But if you are serious about stuff, and if you've made a lot of failures, tried things and failed and got it up and done it again, you'll find it gets easier and easier. And that the successes will start coming at a certain point. Again, I don't know if there's such a thing as mastery, and I don't know about masters. I know some animation masters, I know some artist masters, film masters, but I'm wary of descriptions like that because they're easy to challenge, and I would never want to be accused of being a master, because there's only one way to go after you reach that status, and that's down. It's failure. So I don't think anybody is infallible, and most of the people who I know of who are considered masters including the late great Dale Barrow I talked about a couple weeks ago, I just passed recently, were very humble, didn't consider themselves masters at all, and knew that they had a lot to learn along with everyone else. So come to school to fail a lot and make a lot of mistakes, and just use that as your time to incubate, so that by the time you get out into the real world, you're ready to just take everybody on. So, Patriots, you can't draw well, but you want to pursue learning 2D animation. You should take classes to learn how to draw well before you take the 2D animation degree. Well, here's the thing. I mean, we teach you how to, well, we don't teach you how to draw, but we teach you tips and tricks as part of the course for 2D animation. We have drawing classes. But if you are interested in doing traditional 2D animation, which is you're drawing every frame like I'm doing today here, if that's something that you're interested in, then you should be drawing already. You should be drawing all the time, and drawing from real life and getting better and better every time you sit down to draw something. Just keep practicing and getting better at your craft. There's no other way around it. That's just the bottom line. And we can teach you techniques. We can teach you all sorts of interesting tips and tricks. But at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to, at least for hand-drawn stuff, your draftsperson skills. I used to say draftsmanship, but I don't want to exclude anyone. But how well can you draw? And so you need to get on it right away and practice all the time drawing. And then that's how you get better and better, along with what we teach you in the class. But it shouldn't stop you. By contrast, we have another program that's called the advanced program. And right now you have to take the first one to get to the second one. We may look into that and see if we can change that up a little bit, so that people who aren't as inclined to draw every frame can also participate and do animation. So it's puppet animation, puppet rigs, they call it. And that's where you may have done it in Flash, which is now Animate CC, or maybe you did it in After Effects, maybe you experimented with this in other programs. It's where I've got a character, and my character is broken down into pieces so that the legs, for example, are separate and they operate on a hinge. And because they operate on a hinge, I can break them out onto another layer, or onto a joint system, a skeleton joint system, and then place their rotation point appropriately, and then ta-da, I can animate my character so that it's rotating, animating based on rotations, and then also to translations and warping and things like that. If you're serious about it, in our course, the advanced course, you learn how to actually create a skeleton system that connects all this stuff together. And then really you're just taking individual pieces and translating them. That means moving them around and rotating them, just like a puppet, like it's a skeleton of some kind. Look at that. Cat's like, no, that's terrifying. Cat's scared. So that's just something to think about. What if I don't want to draw? Or what if I'm not that good at drawing by nature? Is there room for me as an animator? Well, there certainly is. I don't know that I was the best dressed person in the world. And when I moved into CG animation, I was actually kind of relieved, because it freed me up to focus on the emotion itself and not worry about every single drawing being perfect. And I found that really freeing. And then I played around with Flash, which became Animate CC, and then After Effects, puppet pins and such. I think it's fun because I really like limited animation, and I like being able to create something quickly and get an endorphin rush and get the approval, and then move on to another project. What I'm doing here, this 2D stuff, where you draw every frame and you try to make it really pretty, as you can tell if you've been watching these streams for a while, it takes a long time. I mean, I only do this 2 hours a week. I don't have time to do it during the week. So if I did it during the week, which I usually do when I'm finishing a project, so you don't have to watch all the minute details, it takes hours and hours and hours. Well, animation takes hours and hours. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. If you want it to look nice, then you have to spend a lot of time working on it. But if you're not inclined to draw, then you might want to consider 3D animation, where you're just moving things around. Not just moving things around. It's a lot more to it than that. But 3D animation or puppet animation using pre-rigged puppets, rigged elements that we provide for you at the school. So that's an option. It's something that you can do. And like I said, we're still rolling that one out. It's still coming, but we're real excited about it. Just doing some checking here to make sure this thing is looking good before I move on to another drawing. I'm just going to fix some things up. So while I'm doing that, asking more questions. Actually, have you used the puppetry tools in Harmony like master controllers? Yeah, so that's what I was saying is yeah, so maybe that's directed to Patriot, but that's what it's saying. That's what we do in the advanced courses for 2D, as we focus on stuff. Well, hello there, Jordan. Nice to see you again. Hope you're doing well. I think I saw you this year, but if I hadn't said it already, Happy New Year. I think you've been here since the new year started, but welcome. Former student of mine, in case anybody's curious, wants to know what the 2D program was like when I taught it to them. And I'm sure Jordan will tell you that it was nonstop torture. It was nonstop me just cracking the whip and making sure that everybody is falling in line. It's not like that at all. So Jordan, you don't need to say anything about it at all. But the fact that Jordan shows up here and says hello means must have had a fairly good time in the course. But the topic tonight, like I've been discussing, is can I get a job? And so there's an example of, can I get a job? I want to be an animator, but I don't really want to draw. Nice, thanks, Jordan. I want to be an animator, but I can't really draw. Well, there's still room for you. There's still a way for you to get in on things if you really love it and you really want to work in the business. There's no reason that you should stop. No reason you should give up on your dream. Give it a chance, and you might be surprised that there's a place for you. So, to answer the question I posed at the beginning, it's like the answer is yes. Can I get a job in animation? And expand that to other categories too. Can I get a job in some of the other specialties? People who want to be gamer employees, people who want to work in the games industry, can you do that? Well, just for the record, now is a really good time to get into that business. There's a lot of excitement going on in that world, and so if that's the way that your interests lie, you've chosen a really hot topic at the moment. Now the question is it something I want to do? Is it something that you want to do for a living? Well, that's something that you have to ask yourself, and the best way to figure out the answers to questions like that is do research. So another thing that you want to do when you're trying to decide, well, can I get a job doing something, is, like I said earlier, ask yourself if that's something you want to do. And the way to figure out if that's something you want to do is to do your homework and look into what it is that people do when they have a job doing what you want to do. So for example, you could just type in working in the game industry. What's it like? You may find that once you do that, you may not be as interested in working in the game industry. I've heard some interesting stories about it, that it's very fast-paced, that it's very exciting, and exciting to the point of sometimes being unpredictable. The people that I know who work in it, they love it. They love that aspect of it. And so, but it's a question you need to ask yourself. Is it something that I want to do? And then having decided that it is something that you want to do, then your next mission is to ask yourself, well, how do I go about getting a job like that then? Yes, I have seen what it requires, what a day in the life of a person who works in whatever industry I've decided. So now how do I get that job? So There are many different ways to look into this, but the bottom line almost always comes down to networking in some form or another. Um, it's true that I did get some jobs where I didn't actually know anyone, didn't have any connections, didn't have any, I mean, the job that I'm currently doing right now, I just applied for it and I got it years and years ago now. They just took a chance on me and then hired me, and it's worked out great. But part of the reason that they did hire me is I already had a body of work. I'd been employed for many years, and I kind of had a reputation. I certainly had a resume, and so they were pretty sure what they were getting when they hired me. And it was just a matter of me making sure that I lived up to their expectations, which hopefully I do. And that was the same with my job in visual effects. When I worked for Rhythm and Hughes, they hired me. I'm pretty sure that they hired me based on my resume and the fact that I worked at Disney and DreamWorks. So it wasn't like I had no contacts at all. It was more or less I had the contact of the places I'd worked at. They could have checked with people I worked with at those places, and they might have found that I was given a thumbs up, by the supervisors I had. I'm pretty sure I would have gotten that. But so that ends up being a contact in its own way. But regardless, that just proves what I'm saying, which is you need to have contacts. You need to have people who will speak for you or vouch for you, or in some way, shape, or form help you. Because when you're an unknown, there's just really no other way. You have to do your time and prove that you're somebody who's worth hiring, and it's not easy. And so that's what I was saying earlier about, can I get the job that I've always dreamed of? Can I work in the business? Can I work in games or movies or whatever? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you will. It doesn't mean that you're guaranteed anything. And a lot of it's going to matter on how much you do your homework and make connections and establish yourself as somebody who is not only excited about what you want to do, but talented enough to be able to do it given the opportunity. And enthusiasm and eagerness will take you a long ways. It's not the whole way, but it will take you a long way to getting what you want. So you've got to be enthusiastic and eager, but there's a lot more to it than that. You have to do homework and be respectful of the people who are doing the work that you want to be able to do. And if we're living in a world where we could actually leave our homes, again, some of us are, but a lot of us aren't. We could actually do informational interviews where we could maybe it's like, oh, I'm working on a school paper project and I want to come to your studio and see how you spend your time and what your life is like as an effects artist, for example. Well, but you can still do stuff like that online. In fact, maybe it's easier now to do it online, is to be able to just say, hey, I'm doing a research paper. And just so you know, you don't actually have to do a research paper to do this, as long as you're not doing anything rude or getting anyone in trouble or misrepresenting yourself or anything. There are some people who would call you out and say, hey, you said you were doing a research paper. Where is it? I want to see it. But getting an informational interview with somebody is a great way to find out what people do for a living and whether or not it's something you want to do. And the secret to it, I always say, is you just have to let them know from the start that you're not actually going to try and schmooze them for a job. You contact somebody and you just say, hey, I just really want to talk about what you do for a living, again, for my school paper. And is that something, could I interview you? And that's all I want to do. I'm not going to do a begathon session after that. And you might be surprised. It might work. It might not. You go into the next one. I know lots of people who don't like to talk about themselves or what they do in animation. It attracts people who are introverted. And you have to be respectful of that. But I also know a lot of people who are more than happy to talk about what they like to do for a living. And so it's just a matter of making the right connection. But you won't know until you try. So you want to make sure and Good night, Sherry. Thank you for stopping by, and I got your message. I just have been really busy today, but thank you. I'm excited. So cool. Sherry's a friend of mine. Uh, yes, good night, and enjoy your evening, Sherry. Thanks for coming by. Do I know an effects dude from RNH by the surname of Dean? Not offhand. They kept us kind of sequestered, so I didn't mix with other departments. As it happens at CG Spectrum, there are people that were from Rhythm and Hues, and we didn't cross paths. So in a studio of any size, if they're keeping departments separate, then you might not work with somebody. Or also like at Disney, there were people that I worked with, and we were there at the same time, but we were working on different films. And at Disney at that time, there were, well, I mean, I think they still might be doing that, but they would always have like 2 or 3 films in production, and then one's active and one's not as active. And that would be the way that you make friends, is you'd be working on one specific picture, movie, picture, that's an old-fashioned phrase. When I was in pictures, they would have you on one specific movie, and then that one might be the active one, and so you'd be working on that one, and then not really cross paths with people who are not working on the active film but are on the development for the new one that's coming. And so you just don't know. You wouldn't know everybody, I guess is what I mean. So yeah, there's lots of people that I worked with, but I don't really know who they are. And there's also a lot of people, once you've been in any business for any length of time, or once you've been on the planet for any length of time, you may find that you kind of forget how you know certain people. And so when somebody contacts me and they say, hey, remember me? Sometimes I have to stop and think, yes, but I'm not sure why. I don't remember where exactly I know you from. I know that we either worked together, we went to school together, or something, but it's not just me. I used to think I have the worst memory for that sort of thing, but I now know most of my friends will say the same thing, that after you've worked in many studios and after you've been through high school and college and any number of things, or moved around a lot, that at a certain point you kind of lose track of how you know the people that you're not friends with actively every day. I mean, fortunately, there's things like Facebook and stuff, but so you can keep track of, oh, yeah, I remember we worked at this studio. But yeah, so at the studios, there were a lot of people that I would be friends with while the movie was going, and then as soon as the movie was over, we'd lose touch. There are people that I had deep personal connections with. We went through a lot together, and ups and downs and the whole gamut. And in some cases, we're just not even remotely friends anymore. We don't have anything in common at all and haven't talked in years and years. In some cases, I've kind of forgotten who they were. And then I suddenly am reminded, and I go, oh, wow, yeah, that's right. Just to put it in perspective, I had a friend who I was talking to once, and he says, oh, yeah, you know that you and I hung out with Elvira, the Halloween icon person in Oregon in the 80s. And it was when we went to a Muppet exhibit of the puppets from like Dark Crystal and stuff up in Oregon. And I said to him, no, you're dreaming. That never happened. I couldn't, for the life of me, I would not forget having met Elvira and hanging out with the Muppets and seeing all those cool sculptures and stuff. And my friend, who was kind of an imp, he was like, yes, we did. And guess what? I have proof. And I made him a dare, said something like, if you have proof, I'll do this or do that, or buy a dinner or some silly thing. And so he sent me the pictures, and I ended up, buying dinner or paying him money or something, because I absolutely did meet and hang out with Elvira briefly. And we did it at an exhibit where they were also showing Muppet stuff. And how I forgot, I'll never know, but it's a real good sign to me that it's like, even stuff you really think you'll care about, people you think you'll care about, you'll eventually, potentially, you may find that it gets foggier. So maybe I met people, but that name doesn't ring a bell. So Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I knew a lot of people at Rhythm and Hughes, but there were a lot of people there, so who knows? And the same with Disney. It's like when I was there in the '90s, there were so many people. There was such a big company. It was impossible for everyone to know everyone. And then I was really stuck in my department. All I did there was work. I didn't socialize. I didn't do anything other than work when I was at Disney. So I knew the people in my immediate circle on the film I was working on. After the film was over, I knew the people in the other project I was working on, and that was it. And that's not uncommon. But here's some advice, getting back to you guys, and can I get the job I want? Remember names. Oof, that's an important one. It's so important, and yet I'm terrible at it. It's not possible to be terrible at it when you're trying to get a job, when you're trying to keep a job, trying to make a good impression. You must remember names, the people that you encounter who are part of trying to get a job. There's no excuse for it. Even if you have special circumstances and that you have a special situation with remembering things, you're not exempt. Use the tools that you have at your disposal, whatever they may be, to remember names, whatever that means to you. I don't want to insult or insinuate anything about anyone by going too far down that route, but just there's a way to do it. There's always a way, and it's imperative that you remember people's names. It's the most important thing to them that there is, and so you've got to remember their names and then make good use of it when you get someone's name. The way it works is this, and I learned this at a young age, and I was much better at it once, when it mattered, I was. But the way it works is like this, is a person's name is the most important thing to them that you can imagine. And so that's why you need to remember names, is it makes the difference between somebody that's going to potentially give you a job and someone who's going to look at you and go, oof, that person's not who we want at all. And all I can say is this, is ask yourself the last time somebody referred to you directly by your name, and ask yourself if it made you feel special. For example, you may notice that when I'm looking at the chats, I try to address you by whatever your handle is. So for example, hey Jordan, how's it going tonight? I have no idea if Jordan's even still out there right now, and we've never met in person. We only had an online class, but if it was me and somebody addressed me personally, I'd be like, oh, hey, well, that was for me. Thanks. Yeah, that's cool. And then I might respond back. There's something about using the names of people directly. It makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And I'm not saying that's you, Jordan. I'm just using you as an example because I knew you. And hopefully you don't mind me taking that opportunity to use you for an example. But better yet, somebody I know I can do this with, but hey Sherry, thanks for stopping by and chatting with us tonight. Thank you for visiting with me while I do my live stream. I really appreciate that, Sherry. Sherry's gone, or was going to be gone soon. It's a way of making people feel as if they are being responded to individually and getting individual attention, and that you cared enough to remember their name and then use it. So yeah, I can't stress that enough. It's one of the most important rules going when it comes down to what are the rules for trying to get a job, trying to keep a job, trying to make a good impression, is you must absolutely remember people's names and use their names in a nice way, and that's an important thing too. You just can't willy-nilly just be talking to people and dropping their name. It becomes phony after a while. Use it with purpose and watch people respond, and then watch your chances improve of having people like you enough so that when there's a gig, they'll remember you and potentially hire you for it. Again, you can overdo it. You don't want to be phony, but that's just a general rule of thumb for everything, is never, ever, ever to be phony. With everything that you do, you should be trying to be legit and be honest about who you are. Think about this. If you get a job based on pretending to be somebody else, you're not going to keep it anyway. So, and you certainly won't enjoy it because you'll know deep inside that you're phoning it in. You're not actually doing it for real. And so the kind of job you want to get is something that is ultimately going to be a really good fit for who you are. And that means whoever you are, whatever your situation is. We live in a great time where, certainly in the world of entertainment, diversity is not only welcome, it's encouraged. Yeah, I always say this about the last studios I worked at. There were plenty of people of all genders working in the studios, and it's getting really hard to talk in terms of borders between things, but that really is how we look at the world. It's like we go, this is this, and this is that, and this doesn't look like that, ergo this is something else. So until that changes, there's still the fact that we look at differences, and all differences are welcome in the animation studios as long as you can do the job. That's what I noticed. Is the only time people were not welcome in the studios I worked at, anyway, specifically in the later years, was if they couldn't or wouldn't do the job that they were hired to do. Short of that, no discrimination, no issues with anything, and in fact, an encouragement of the kind of diversity that would make a studio more interesting and more full of different worldviews and different ideas and talent from wherever it comes from without any bias whatsoever. So hopefully that's encouraging. That's one of the things I love about the entertainment industry in general, is that there seems to be a lot of room for people who are diverse, whatever the heck that means. But so if you've done your homework and you've figured out something about how you can get your job, then what you probably have done is figured out, well, I need to put a portfolio together, or I need to have a website, or I need these specific skills. I need to learn Toon Boom, or I need to learn about Houdini or Unreal Engine or something. And then you have to set about doing that. That's the hard part, because what if I don't know these things? Well, number one, you can take classes, right? We've already kind of figured that out. That's an option. But number two, you have to get good at what you do. That's, really a big component of it, is when somebody's looking at reels and websites, they don't really know who you are, and there's no way to tell them who you are and how wonderful you are. So you have to prove it through your work first and foremost. And again, that is what you're being hired to do, is a job. I applied for a job early on in my career that I was not qualified to do, and was actually kind of read the riot act by someone who said I was wasting their time by applying for something that I was clearly not qualified for. And it really taught me a lot, especially when I became somebody who was looking at reels, that this is like, there's nothing more frustrating than having to sit down and do something and then finding out that you got to wade through a lot of stuff where people weren't prepared and didn't take that extra moment to really think about what was required of the job and how to prepare their work for the job at hand. So anyway, so homework. Do your homework and find out what it is that you need to be able to do the job that you want to do. And then once you've got that, then you need to just try and keep trying and keep trying. Now, the problem is everybody has to ask themselves at some point, well, when do I know that this just isn't happening for me? This is wrong. And unfortunately, that's the tough answer to that question is if you give up, then it wasn't for you. If you stop, it wasn't for you. If you don't give up, if you don't stop, then it was for you. You could go to the end of your life and not get the things that you wanted, as far as your career goes, at least, I guess. It probably applies to other things too. But if you stopped, because you didn't get it, whatever it was that you wanted, then you've just proven you really didn't want it that badly. And the people that I know who are successful in careers that are special cases, like entertainment or the arts of any kind, it's like they're very dedicated. They don't take no for an answer. They work and do what they love regardless of whether they're getting paid to do it. And they have a love that's borderline obsessive. For example, I came up with an idea for a project in 1985 when I was, I believe, 19 or thereabouts. I know, right? And I didn't accomplish that project until 2009. That's a long time. And while I was not accomplishing that project over the many years in between 1985 and 2009, I was just preparing for the day when I would actually be able to do that project. And so I would just, it was a musical thing. And so I was learning music, I was learning different, ways of getting my stuff out there, so that one day when I had my chance, I'd be ready and I would be able to put my musical project on, which I always thought it'd be a movie, but it ended up being a show that played in Hollywood rather successfully, I might add. By my terms anyway. It wasn't Hamilton or anything, but it was certainly on a small scale on which it was done, it was successful. But I just didn't give up. And having gotten there, I finally did finish. I did the show and then I'm like, okay, great. I don't need to do anything more with it. But until that happened where I'm like, no, haven't done it right. I just kept at it. And even after 2009, I did the show again in 2016, slightly altered because I didn't feel that the first show had really accomplished everything I wanted to do with the show. In some ways, the redux of it was better. Some ways it was worse. But at least I could say, you know what, I really did it. And I don't have a whole lot left that I need to say with this project. There's still, I still think sometimes, ooh, it might be a fun movie. It might be fun, live recorded, whatever. But I can't say I didn't do it. And so having done that project, I can move on and go on to other things. So that was, from 1985 to 2009 to 2016 that I was involved in a project like that. And I also think of Anne Rankin, who passed away recently, and she was saying, I was in the show Chicago in 75 when I was under 30, and then I was in it again in 1995 when I was 50-ish, and then she choreographed the thing when they made a big show out of it that's still playing to this day. It's like that kind of dedication is what separates the amateurs and the professionals. If you're willing to be that dedicated to what it is you love to do, that you would hang on for that long, then you've really proven yourself, and it's just a matter of time until you get something along the lines of the success that you seek. But remember, it goes back to deciding right from the beginning, what do you think success is? How will you know when you've attained success? Is it a special place that you want to get to financially, or is it, I want to get my project done? And really think about that, because two things. One, you need to have that as something to reach for, to just keep striving for. You can't just have an idea, I want to be successful. That doesn't really amount to much in terms of concrete success goals. And the other thing is, you have to ask yourself, well, what happens when I get it? What happens when I get what I want? Because it isn't enough just to have a goal and say, well, I got it, I'm done, I'm going to retreat. And what's funny is I went through this was something I actually experienced, where probably about the time I got to DreamWorks anyway, I had done almost everything that I ever set out to do in terms of animation. Definitely I did it by the time I got into CG animation, and I could actually say without any doubt whatsoever that I was a full-fledged animator working in a major animation company, and had a measure of success and was well regarded, and really wasn't sure what to do after that, because I worked so hard to get what I wanted, and then turned around and realized that I had it, and now I had to ask myself, well, then what? It's no surprise to me in retrospect that I ended up leaving DreamWorks. Just for the record, I was invited to leave DreamWorks. It's no surprise that I was invited to. Very nicely, by the way, and only after I'd finished doing more projects. It's like basically go away, but not yet. But it's not a surprise that I was invited to leave because I had just lost my direction. I didn't really know what to do because I'd gotten everything I wanted. And I'm a firm believer that once you get what you want, you need to kind of stop and reassess. And you shouldn't just keep pushing and pushing and going for more and more and more, whatever it is you're after. That you really need to stop and go, okay, I did it, I made it, I'm going to glory in this, enjoy it, and then I'm going to find my next goal and start working for that. Because you should always have a goal. So let's say, back to the subject for today, let's say that you get the job that you always wanted. Well, what are you going to do next? Right? And then first off, you have to keep it. That's an important distinction to be made, which is, there's getting the job that you always dreamed of having, and then there's the question of, can I keep it? And I'll talk about that maybe another time. That's a whole other story, and it's getting late in the evening. But you really have to ask yourself, well, what if I get everything I want? Then what? And there's nothing to be more sad and more unfortunate than someone who doesn't have any dreams or goals or ambitions, who is absolutely content with where they are in life, because one way or another, that's going to change. And it's really good to embrace change and to seek change, because that's just the way that the world is. And look at nature and you'll see, not to get too out there, but look around and you'll see that the world around you is changing constantly and morphing and coming and going with the seasons and such. And so it's a pretty good idea to embrace change and be ready for things when they come, and not be one of those people who thought that, oh, I just thought it would be like this forever, and then get swallowed up by the changes. Rather ride the wave than be crushed by the wave that comes, talking in surf terms. So so just ask yourself that question when you're making up your plans, is for what you want to do. It's like, well, it's not enough to just go, I want to get a job. You have to say, well, what happens when I get that job? Where am I going to go from there? Now, if your job is I want to be the ruler of the known universe, and then your only other option is, well, I need to find other universes to conquer. Yeah, okay. Well, it's going to take you a really long time to become the ruler of the known universe in the first place. So you might want to set your goal a little bit closer to home. Maybe you want to rule over your cat. Speaking of wood cats, maybe that's enough. It's a good place to start. And having done that, not that you should rule over a cat, I don't know, whatever, dumb example, but having done that, then it's like, okay, well, that worked. Now what do I do? Now I'm going to set another goal. And I always liked setting goals that were within reach, but that were lofty enough to really be noteworthy, so that when I got them, I really feel like I got something. So you don't want to set your goals too low, but you also don't want to set your goals so high that you can't ever get them, because then you'll get them. You'll either get them too easily, or you won't get them easily enough. And in either case, it's not the kind of goal that will sustain you for too long. So just think about getting goals that are slightly out of your reach, but not completely out of your reach. And as I keep saying, keep your eye on the fact that you want to keep setting the goalposts a little bit further whenever you do get what you want, so that you always have a goal out there. And those are the people I've met who are kind of the happiest, are the ones who always have something that's just a little bit outside of their reach that they're striving for, because that kind of hunger is actually a really good feeling. But their goals are attainable, and they do reach a stopping point, and they go, okay, wow, I did that, that's great, awesome, what's next? So just to review, you want to get a plan going, you want to keep a goal in mind, and then you want to do a lot of homework to figure out, first of all, is it something you want? And then second, is it something that you can do and want to pursue? And if that is the case, then you set about going to do it. And then having gotten what you wanted out of it, then you quit, do something else. Well, not quit, but you keep moving. And those are some hard-won tips and tricks that I learned as a result of having been in the business for a fairly long time and a fairly lucrative time, and having watched others and watched my own career kind of go up and down over the years. So I just want to mention you made a logo and showed it to your brain injury group and they liked it. That's great. So now you've got people who recognize you for something that you can do. That's awesome. And you never know when that's going to come back. I know people who have taken my classes and they've just done silly things, not silly, but low-key things for their whatever groups that they belong in. And as a result of doing things for those groups, ended up getting a job, and were able to parlay what they were doing into getting a job, just because they proved that they were really excited and had a lot of aptitude for what they were enjoying doing. So yeah, that's great. That's one of the best ways that you can get noticed, is to have people in your circle who will then kind of advocate for you and talk about how cool you are. And then that just keeps growing and growing, hopefully. And the more people you talk to, the more people you show your work to, the more attention you get. And then also, too, your confidence will start to grow. And I can't talk about confidence enough. It's a big thing. It's something that doesn't come easily. Most of us artists were kind of, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I would venture to guess most of us artists are a little on the introverted side, meaning we prefer solitude and just toiling away on our projects. And when it comes to having to deal with people and their individual quirks and needs, and sometimes even demands, some people tend to get quite nervous, specifically if it requires having to speak in public or declare something, or be definitive about something and answer a bunch of stupid questions. So I'm very sympathetic to that, having been someone quite introverted when I was a kid. And what I usually tell people is that trial by fire was a great way to get me out of my shell. Working at Disneyland as a Jungle Cruise operator cured me of my shyness in a matter of hours. I was terrified when I got hired to do it, the job, when I was in college. I mean, I was terrified, but I was also intrigued. I wanted to see if I could actually do it, but I was pretty scared. And they put us through training, taught us all the stupid jokes. If you've ever been to the Jungle Cruise, you know what I mean. And I practiced and rehearsed and just did what I could. It was like learning lines for a show, only a lot less. And then my first day came, and the boat filled up. It was the height of summer. And I just tried to not think too much about it and just remember everything that I learned. And off we went. And suddenly I was taking a group of people from all over the world on a ride that they'd waited a long time to get on. The lines were really long back then. I remember at the height of summer in the 80s, late 80s. And I just did it. And having done it once, I was able to do it a second time. And having done it a second time, I could do it again. And round about probably, I don't know, the end of the day, or maybe even sooner, I actually began to kind of enjoy it. I was like, no, this isn't so bad. In fact, it's nice because I'm making people laugh at the rubbish jokes. And there's something about, riding around in a boat on a summer day, looking at plastic animals, that was sort of pleasant. And I'd always loved Disneyland, and now I was kind of part of it, and could say that I was contributing to the success of people's vacations by what I was doing. The only thing that's funny about that is on my very first trip, there was a kid on the boat, and I overheard him, he was sitting right up front, and I overheard him say to his mom, it's like, "Mom, how come he's riding around so fast?" It's like I was driving really fast because I was scared out of my gourd my first time doing the Jungle Cruise. But again, it just got easier and easier, and you know, I made mistakes. Sometimes things would go wrong, and I felt like I was going to die at the time, but I didn't. In the same way that things go wrong everywhere. When I'm teaching, when I'm doing live streams, things go wrong, and you think, oh, it's going to be the end of the world. Nowadays, really, what I really think is it's just going to be really annoying. It's going to be really unpleasant, and I get grouchy because I expect things to go nicely, and when they don't, I just get perturbed. But in the olden days, I used to feel like I was just going to die if things didn't go right, and that people were going to laugh at me or whatever. And then I began to realize that people really like to laugh. And I actually had somebody who was, there's a grim story, who was in the hospital and didn't have long to go. A young person who worked at Disney, who was beloved by many. I'd never met him, but I did something really dumb at a wrap party. We were having this big fancy dinner, and I was backing away from something. It was dark. It was the House of Blues, and I tripped on the table because I never quite grew into my arms and legs. But I tripped on the table and pretty much upended the entire table's worth of hors d'oeuvres and everything. I tripped on the tablecloth, and just basically the whole thing went down in a big heap. And I looked around, assessed the situation, and then I bowed, and I acted as if I'd done the whole thing on purpose. And my friend told her friend who was hospital bound about that, and he just thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He said, "Oh man, I used to be that person. I used to be such a klutz and would always trip over my own feet because I was distracted." You know, typical artists were always living somewhere else simultaneously to wherever we are at the time. And he says, "I just love hearing the story about this person that, you know, was like me," and he laughed and he thought that was great. And then he didn't live much longer after that. And my friend told me that story, and I was like, wow, that makes me feel good to know that somebody laughed. You know, yeah, they laughed at me. I mean, he wasn't there, he didn't see it happen, but you know, it was laughing at my silliness in tripping over something in a good-natured way, and that I caused him joy as a result of my being a klutz and tripping over something and embarrassing myself in front of everybody at Disney who was at that party that day, I guess. And it's like, yeah, no, it was a good thing. It was good to cause a little bit of joy in somebody's life by my being such a klutz. So don't be afraid of being laughed at. Don't let it stop you from doing the things you want to do. Don't be afraid of looking like a fool. Embrace it. Laugh first. It's people love to laugh, and give them a reason to. And don't take things so seriously, because most things aren't anywhere near as serious as you think they are, including getting a job. I've got about 15 minutes here. I want to finish up with this, which is nowadays, you know, there's a lot of reasons to be nervous, and a lot of things about life that make us nervous, and things that we worry about, especially if you're a young person and you're up and coming and you're, you know, wanting to do things, and the world has, depending on what your circumstances are, the world may have told you that that ain't going to happen and you're not allowed to do these things. And what I like to tell people who are in my demo reel class and very nervous about getting a job, and you know, I've spent all this money on school and I've worked so hard and I'm not sure if I can get a job, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm all freaked out, and it's just making me a nervous wreck. And the first thing I always tell them is that I was there. I did that. I went through that exact same journey once. I went through that journey every time I lost a job for any length of time, and that was 3 really big ones where I just was like, I don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know if I have it, and what if I don't have it, and then I don't get the job that I want, and I have to do jobs that I don't want to do. That's a thing. Well, what I learned to do is while I'm fretting and worrying and being nervous, I tell myself that in a year's time, I make an agreement, say in a year's time, I'm going to look back on this situation and assess it from where I'm at, wherever I am in a year. So for example, in a year from now, I will probably be employed somewhere or doing something, or at least will have moved on from this. And I'm going to look back on this time and kind of chuckle because I know how the story goes now from my place in the future. If I'm in the future and I'm looking back on things from a year ago, it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that in just a matter of weeks, I was about to get a job offer, for example, or I was about to win the lottery, or whatever it is that you think is important, means success. Meet the person of my dreams, whatever. I didn't know that where I was at a year ago. Had I known a year ago that that was coming, I'm not sure I would have worried so much, and I might have enjoyed the ride getting there a little bit more. And so you can still do that from the place where you're at right now and go, well, I know that in a year from now, things are going to be different. True, they might not be better. In some ways, they might even be worse, but they're not going to be the same. So whatever I'm concerned about now will have changed. If things have gotten worse, I won't be worried about this anymore because this will seem like small potatoes. If they've gotten better, I won't be worried about what's happening here and now because I'll be happy. I'm not worried about anything. I'm happy. So you just kind of project yourself into the future, if that makes sense, mentally, and think about where you are going to be in the future and how good, bad, or indifferent, you will not be worried about the things that you're worried about right now. Now you could say, well, I might still be worried about getting a job, but again, you will then at that point be a year into worrying about getting a job. I don't know anybody who has spent that much time on something and is the same person that they were before. So if you've been worrying about getting a job for a year and you haven't got anything resembling leads or skills that are marketable or networking situations that you've tried to develop, you may at that point need to reassess what you're doing and start doing something differently, whatever that is. And it's different from everybody. If you haven't progressed anywhere in a year, then it's probably because you're not doing enough things, and you just need to start doing more things and failing at things more, because that's how you learn and grow. So think about it in those terms. Project yourself a year into the future and imagine yourself in some place that's different than where you are now, and think about how differently you're going to assess where you are right now in the past. And I think you'll find that it actually helps. It's helped me many times to think, someday I'm going to be in a different situation and I'm going to be laughing about this, or I'm going to be in a successful situation and be discussing this and going, man, I was so nervous before I got my job. But once I got that job and once I worked at it for several months, I would never have been as nervous if I'd known what I know now. So just something to think about as you prepare for whatever it is that you want to do next, whether it's a career or any number of other things. So Riz Wanmation, I saw that. That's what I saw that you made your logo and showed it to your brain injury group and they liked it. That's really nice. I'm glad that worked out for you. And that's what I was saying earlier about how you can find the validation you need in all sorts of places. It doesn't always start out as, oh, you just got the greatest job in the world. Sometimes it starts out as you did something for your group and they appreciated it, and that leads to something, and that leads to something else. And next thing you know, you're doing exactly what you always wanted to do. I've seen it many times, so I know it's true. And you must believe me if I say it's true. So, but anyway, yeah, glad to hear that was the case. That's good news. Another one I always talk about is Fiverr or related. There are places where you can go to market yourself, even if you're not a professional yet, and get some experience under your belt dealing with clients, dealing with selling yourself, setting prices for things, learning how long it takes to do a project, and on and on and on. You need to be able to do those things if you want to be a freelancer, that's for sure. And you may also have to do those things when you're working in a bigger company as well. So it's a good idea to get used to doing stuff like that early on by doing like a small company, like fiber related things. All right, so almost done here for the day. I'm just wrapping up these drawings here. I'm going to play this again in just a minute. I want to just finish one last drawing here, just finishing up on the ears, and then I'll play the results. Didn't get a lot done today, but I have certainly made some progress on this piece, and will continue to make progress on this piece. Like I said, got some other things coming up in the near future. Just so you know, we're going to be doing an interview with our anime 2D animation person that's coming up. We've hired somebody to do an anime take on our 2D animation course, and so I'm going to be meeting with this person and doing an interview. It won't be a live stream, it's going to be an actual, just a one-off, and we'll make that available. But keep an eye out for that if you're interested in anime. I'm gonna have I've talked about this person here before and said if you want to take the course, the 2D animation course from this instructor, you just need to sign up for the class and specify that you want to take the 2D animation course with the anime kind of overlay. But I'm going to be discussing anime, working in Tokyo, working on anime productions with somebody who does it for a living, has worked on some really cool stuff next week. And then we'll be making that available to you. I'll probably announce it here next week if anybody's interested. I'll let you know where to get a hold of that interview and check it out if you want to see more. But I'll talk more about that probably next time. In the meantime, again, you can sign up for that class at any time just by going to CG Spectrum and letting us know that that's what you're interested in doing, is the 2D animation program with the anime overlay. And this is a really cool person. You're gonna, if you check this one out, I think you'll be really excited. Misu is the name, and they're really fun. Yeah, she's really a fun person, and really talented and really fun to talk to and talk with. So be on the lookout for that. I'll announce it officially next week, but that's coming. And like I said, there's all sorts of new things coming down the pike. The 3D department, we're gonna be unrolling some new stuff with creature effects and talking about that a little bit more in the future. But yeah, cgspectrum.com. If you've enjoyed this stream, you might want to check out some of the other streams that are available. If you didn't enjoy this stream, you might want to check out some of the other streams that are available. We've got several of them for each of the departments that exist for CG Spectrum, and some of them are really popular. I know the CG animation one is really has a lot of followers, and the person who does it's really cool. But there's a whole mess of them. So if you like streams, we've got you covered, and we're going to be updating and changing things in that department as well coming soon. But go ahead and check it out if that's something that you're enjoying. As always, you can check out and see if there's any free classes going on. They have the trial classes that are available. So if you have any interest in any of the other subjects, or if you've taken a class with the school before and you're like, I'm thinking about doing something else, but I'm not sure if I want to dip my toes into it just yet, you can try one of the trials that happen periodically. And we'd always love to just hear from you if you just simply want to ask questions. So just check out cgspectrum.com and somebody will be happy to answer questions for you. Regardless, I hope that you do continue to pursue whatever it is that you're interested in pursuing. And if that part of that goal is that you want to get a job doing something, that you accept what I've told you, and because I've told it to you, it must be true, right? That if you can imagine a job, there's a way to get it. If a job exists, there's a way to get it. And the more people that are employed doing something, the more likely you could be employed doing that as well. I always tell people, when I started out in animation, I was told in no uncertain terms there was no animation industry at all. And while I was working in the business really slowed down and there were no jobs for a long period of time. And yet I continued to work, and many other people continued to work and get jobs. And during lockdown times, pandemic times, people are still getting jobs, getting hired to do things. So that is not an excuse. It won't work. Sorry. I won't listen if you tell me that that's going to prevent you from getting a job. It may make it harder. Look, come on. I'm not trying to downplay anything, but it's not an excuse not to try. You have to just keep trying things, and you just, when you least expect it, as they sometimes say, you can expect it. So get out there right now and give it your best shot. And if you don't get it, if you fail, get up and try it again. And just keep trying until they get so sick of you that they actually put you into whatever it is you want to do. I've seen it happen. I've interviewed people who were, there was somebody who tried to get into one of my shows and had absolutely no talent whatsoever, at least for what I needed for the show, that's to be fair. But boy, he was persistent, and I ended up giving him a chance, and then told him I didn't want him in my show, but hey, he got to show me what he could do. All right, so I'm going to finish up here and just quickly go through the keys and breakdowns that I have for today that I've been working on, so you can see. All right, so I'm going through those, so you can just see what I've got so far, and then I'll play it at speed if that one needs some love. That one needs some love. That one's all right. That one needs love. It's doing all right. I'll play it at speed and just see how it's looking. Turn off the whiskers. They're on a separate timing. And it's getting there. So next I'm going to be filling in a whole bunch of drawings with the goal of it eventually looking like the fleshed out version, which is right here. So, and not only will I have fleshed it out, I will have, with cleanup, I will have given it some color and probably have a background or something on it. So probably not next week, but in a couple weeks this will be done, and then I've got some new projects coming down the pike. But it's always a pleasure. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and I hope that you continue to seek out your goals and try to attain them. Thanks, Jordan. I'm glad you liked it. Hope to see some of you again next time. If you're free and around, I'll be here, same time, same place, and looking for your cool questions and comments and commentaries. But beyond that, have a safe and happy rest of the day, rest of the week, wherever you are, whatever you like to do. And this is me, Scott Claus for CG Spectrum, signing off. Take care.